You'll notice something peculiar when a woman is drawn to you but isn't ready to admit it, not even to herself. She finds ways to insert herself into your life, not dramatically, not with declarations, but subtly, quietly, almost strategically. She'll text you just to check in, or she'll happen to be around wherever you are, consistently showing up in spaces you occupy. The presence becomes a pattern, and it's not accidental. Yet here's the paradox: while her actions speak of curiosity, of interest, of quiet pursuit, her words remain deliberately vague. She doesn't name the connection. She avoids labeling the dynamic. In conversations, she'll talk about everything but you and her. She'll laugh at your jokes, linger in your energy, and find ways to keep the interaction alive. But when it comes to anything personal or emotionally revealing, she'll retreat into ambiguity. This isn't manipulation, it's protection. Because desire, especially unspoken desire, often carries emotional risk. A woman who secretly wants you but refuses to tell you often lives in a delicate balance between wanting to be near you and being afraid of what closeness might mean. Her mind is still processing what her body and emotions have already decided. That's why the inconsistency shows up. It's not because she's unsure of you. It's because she's unsure of herself in the face of what you represent. Now, psychologically, this can be traced back to vulnerability thresholds. Many people, women included, have a deep craving for connection, but an even deeper fear of rejection or loss of control. To admit desire out loud means surrendering a degree of emotional safety. So instead of verbalizing it, they test the waters with presence. They observe, they linger, they remain close enough to feel the possibility, without having to risk the fallout of direct expression. But here's the challenge: if you only listen to what she says and not what she does, you'll miss the message. Or worse, you'll respond with confusion, frustration, or withdrawal, thinking she's not interested, when in reality, she's just not ready to own it. This is where emotional intelligence becomes critical. You need to understand that sometimes presence is a form of confession. Her consistency is her admission. Her proximity is her vulnerability on display, even if she hasn't found the words for it yet. At this point, it's easy to ask, what do I do with that? And the answer isn't to chase or confront. It's to become a safe space, not a rescuer, not a mind reader, but a grounded man who doesn't need constant validation to understand energy. By responding with calmness, clarity, and authentic engagement, not pressure, you create room for her to become more honest with herself. And when that happens, the truth will unfold, not through coercion, but through trust. So next time you notice a woman consistently showing up, lingering in your life without explanation, pay attention to what her presence is saying, because sometimes the loudest confessions are made in silence. And those who listen with depth will always hear what others miss. You'll often find that when a woman is secretly drawn to you, her body will speak before her mind allows her to. She won't always tell you what she's feeling, but her nervous system will. And one of the most overlooked yet profound signals of hidden attraction is unconscious mirroring. She starts to adopt your tone, your tempo, your gestures, without even realizing she's doing it. You sit back in your chair and she does the same. You touch your face mid-conversation, and moments later she mirrors that motion. These aren't coincidences. They're neurobiological responses. See, when we're emotionally attuned to someone, when we feel connected or intrigued, the brain activates something called mirror neurons. These are the very circuits responsible for empathy, for synchronization, for emotional understanding without words. Mirroring is not a tactic. It's an involuntary sign that her internal world is aligning with yours. That alignment shows up in the small, often imperceptible details, and it reveals more than any sentence ever could. Now, this becomes especially powerful when combined with subtle shifts in energy. You may notice her starting to mirror not just your body language, but also your emotional rhythm. When you're calm, she softens. When you're animated, she becomes more expressive. This is the psyche seeking safety and resonance. She's subconsciously trying to create rapport, to match what she feels, not what she's been taught to say. Because society often conditions women to hide direct desire, to suppress bold, romantic intent. So instead, it leaks out through these unconscious channels. The beauty and the complication is that most men miss this. They're too focused on what's being said, on looking for clear, verbal confirmation. But emotional literacy requires a different kind of listening, a kind of attention that isn't just focused on what's loud, but what's real. And if you want to understand the difference between friendly interest and deep, unspoken longing, you must learn to recognize this kind of mirroring for what it is: a soft confession, whispered in behavior rather than words. But here's where it gets even deeper. A woman who mirrors you unconsciously may not even be fully aware of her desire. She may rationalize the connection, tell herself it's just a friendship or a momentary spark. But the body rarely lies. And if her presence is echoing yours, if her actions seem to follow your rhythm, it means part of her is already emotionally invested. The mirroring becomes her silent bridge to you. So, what should you do when you notice it? Don't call it out. Don't force it into the light. Instead, mirror her back with awareness. Respond with authenticity, not strategy. That mutual reflection creates a space where her walls can lower naturally. And when someone feels seen without being exposed, desire grows organically. Comfort turns into courage. Pay attention to how she responds to your essence, not just your actions. Because when she begins to mirror your emotional presence, what she's really saying, without saying it, is that she's already dancing to the rhythm of your energy. And that is one of the clearest signs that her attraction isn't just present, it's personal. There's a peculiar contradiction you'll often witness when a woman secretly wants you but isn't ready or willing to say it out loud. She becomes noticeably more reactive to your attention and your withdrawal. It's subtle, but once you learn to spot it, it becomes impossible to unsee. A slight delay in your replies causes a shift in her mood. A pause in your usual communication stirs a quiet urgency in her. She starts seeking reassurance, sometimes cloaked in casual check-ins or light sarcasm, other times in questions like, "You've been quiet lately," or "Are you still alive?" Masked as jokes, but loaded with emotional weight. What's happening beneath the surface is deeply psychological. Desire unspoken becomes a private vulnerability. It brews in the space between action and inaction. So, when you change the rhythm, even just slightly, it forces her to confront emotions she hasn't verbalized. You become a variable she can't quite predict, and that uncertainty reveals her level of emotional investment. If your absence causes her to act differently, even subtly, she's not indifferent. She's entangled, even if she won't admit it. This is especially true for women who are emotionally guarded. They've been taught, either through personal experience or cultural messaging, to never be the first to confess romantic interest. So, instead of approaching directly, they manage from the shadows. But when they feel you pulling back, the emotional alarm bells go off. And here's the irony: her desire becomes most visible not when you're present, but when you pull away. That discomfort, that subtle disruption in her emotional state, is a reflection of the internal tug of war between wanting to remain in control and needing to feel connected. Men often misread this. They think her delayed or seemingly lukewarm responses mean she's not interested. But what's really happening is that she's observing you just as closely, watching for consistency, for emotional safety, for cues that she can lean in without losing face. Her reactivity isn't weakness, it's exposure. It's her subconscious showing its cards. Now, this doesn't mean you should manipulate the connection by going cold to test her reactions. That's not maturity. That's performance. The goal is awareness, not games. When you understand that her emotional responses, her sensitivity to your attention or distance, are signals of deeper feeling. You begin to see her more clearly, not as someone playing hard to get, but as someone wrestling with vulnerability in real time. So the next time she seems more affected than she admits, more curious about your day, more bothered by your silence, more invested in your mood. Don't ignore it. Don't overanalyze either. Just observe with grounded presence. Because when a woman starts reacting to the spaces you leave behind, it's rarely about the space. It's about the emotional imprint you've left there. And that, perhaps more than anything else, is proof that she wants you, not casually, but consciously, even if she's not ready to say it. Another powerful, yet often misunderstood, sign that a woman secretly wants you, but doesn't want to say it, is when she creates or sustains situations that allow prolonged one-on-one time with you. Under casual pretenses, it could be a spontaneous, "You should help me with this," request, or asking you to tag along for errands she could easily handle alone. On the surface, it might seem like nothing, just time spent together. But underneath, it's a strategic space carved out for intimacy to develop without the pressure of labeling it. What makes this especially revealing is that women who suppress their desire often channel it into proximity. When verbalizing their feelings feels too risky, they rely on shared time to communicate what words can't. She doesn't need to explicitly confess anything because the invitation into her private world is the confession. Every unnecessary detour in your presence, every extended conversation, every lingering goodbye, all of it is her way of saying, "I'm not ready to name this, but I don't want it to end." This behavior is deeply rooted in the psychology of emotional safety. When a woman desires you, but isn't ready to confront that desire directly, she tries to feel her way into clarity. And what better way to do that than to observe you in different contexts? When you're not performing, when the world isn't watching. These moments give her access to the rawness of who you are. And for her, that's not just attraction. It's assessment. But here's what most men miss. She's not just spending time with you. She's creating micro invitations for emotional intimacy. Moments where she can gauge your consistency, your attention, your depth. And if you fail to recognize these invitations, if you treat them as coincidence or convenience, you lose the opportunity to meet her in that subtle vulnerability. This is where your awareness matters, because a woman who's unsure of her own readiness will often test how emotionally attuned you are. She'll open the door, ever so slightly, to see if you walk through it with presence or pass it by without notice. And it's not about being romantic or poetic in those moments. It's about being available, not physically, but emotionally. Are you paying attention? Are you curious about her inner world? Do you notice the quiet ways she tries to bring you closer? So the next time she insists she needs your help assembling a bookshelf at 9 p.m. or suggests a random coffee meet up after a long day, understand that these aren't logistical choices. They're emotional offerings. She's crafting time with you not because she needs something done, but because she wants to feel what it's like to have you near. And that in itself is desire speaking, not through grand declarations, but through the small windows of shared time that say everything she's too guarded to admit. So learn to read what isn't said, because the quiet hours, the spontaneous plans, the soft, "What are you doing later?" those are not random. They are her way of saying, "I want you here," even if she's not ready to say it out loud. There's a moment in the connection between a man and a woman where silence becomes louder than words, and glances say far more than full conversations ever could. When a woman secretly wants you but isn't prepared to voice it, her body becomes the first traitor of herself, restraint. You'll start to notice subtle shifts in how she positions herself around you, in the proximity she allows, in the way her energy sharpens when you're near. She becomes more physically expressive, not necessarily in an overtly flirtatious way, but in a way that betrays a longing she's working hard to keep under wraps. This is where the psychology of desire gets fascinating. Human beings communicate far more through body language than they do through words. For women especially, who are often socially conditioned to avoid direct confrontation with their own romantic impulses, nonverbal cues become the safest outlet for their attraction. So instead of telling you how she feels, she shows you. By leaning in just a little closer, by mirroring your gestures, by laughing at something that wasn't that funny, or brushing something off your shirt that didn't need to be brushed off. You see, when a woman finds herself emotionally drawn to you, but can't quite rationalize or express it, her body will unconsciously act out the desire she's trying to suppress. The barriers she usually puts up, physical or emotional, begin to weaken. Her guard softens in your presence. Maybe she touches her hair more often, angles her body toward you even when she's not talking directly to you, or finds reasons to initiate light, casual contact. Each of these moments is her way of closing the emotional distance without having to name it. It's her subconscious reaching out before her conscious mind gives permission. But here's the part that requires your discernment. Not all physical cues mean attraction. The difference lies in the pattern, the consistency. If you begin to notice that her behavior shifts specifically around you, she becomes more animated, more aware, more present. Those aren't random changes. They're targeted. They're indicators of emotional elevation. And when a woman's energy elevates in your presence, that's no accident. That's emotional chemistry breaking through her resistance. This is also why it's important to remain grounded in your own presence. Don't get carried away trying to decode every look or every movement. Instead, remain still and aware. Pay attention to how she behaves around you, not just with you. You'll start to feel the pull, even if she hasn't said a word. And when you do, respond with quiet confidence. There's no need to rush it or force a confession. Often, just holding that space, making her feel seen without demanding clarity, is what gives her the courage to eventually acknowledge what she feels. So if you notice her body speaking louder than her words, understand that it's not confusion, it's transition. She's navigating between the safety of denial and the risk of vulnerability. And your role is not to pressure, but to perceive. Because when desire is suppressed, it doesn't disappear, it shifts form. And if you learn to see through that silence, you'll realize she's been speaking to you all along. When a woman secretly desires you but doesn't want to admit it, even to herself, she often becomes emotionally reactive in subtle yet telling ways. One of the most profound signs is that your presence affects her energy in ways she can't control. You might notice it in the way her mood shifts when you enter the room, or how she becomes inexplicably nervous, guarded, or even unusually defensive during conversations that would otherwise be ordinary. This isn't just moodiness. It's the emotional cost of resisting what she feels but isn't ready to confront. Attraction, when unspoken, doesn't die down, it builds pressure. And when a woman is emotionally drawn to you, but is simultaneously trying to suppress the connection, her internal conflict can't help but leak into the way she treats you. She might interrupt you more than usual, get agitated over minor differences, or act oddly distant without any clear reason. Ironically, this emotional friction isn't because she doesn't like you. It's often because she likes you too much and hasn't figured out what to do about it. You've become the mirror she's avoiding because it reflects a truth she's not yet ready to see. This emotional volatility can feel confusing if you don't recognize it for what it truly is. But this is where maturity and emotional awareness on your part become essential. Instead of reacting to her tension with your own, you have to learn to hold your ground with calm, steady energy. The truth is, when your presence alone has the power to alter someone's emotional landscape, you're not insignificant to them. Quite the opposite. You've touched something deep. You've interrupted their carefully maintained emotional balance. And sometimes That interruption shows up not just as emotional sensitivity, but as a kind of silent anticipation. She might not say it, but you'll feel that she expects more from you. More attention, more effort, more depth. She may not verbalize it, but her disappointment will reveal itself when you pull back or focus your energy elsewhere. That subtle letdown, that emotional pullback, it's her way of showing that your presence carries weight, even if she doesn't understand why it does. Now, it's crucial not to misinterpret every emotional fluctuation as attraction. This is about consistent patterns, not isolated moments. If you notice that she is consistently reactive to you in a way that she isn't with others, if your opinions seem to impact her more deeply, or your absence feels like a disturbance to her rhythm, then it's worth considering that what she's trying not to tell you is exactly what she's been communicating all along, that you matter to her more than she wants to admit. And so, the challenge isn't to confront her or force her into a confession. The challenge is to remain emotionally intelligent enough to see through the fog of suppression and respond not with pressure, but with presence. In the end, it's not always about hearing the words. Sometimes the most authentic truths are spoken in silence, in tension, and in all the little ways a person's heart stumbles in your direction, while their mind tries to walk the other way.